Gospel instructors need to weigh the benefits of cell phones against the negatives and make a decision about whether to ban or not in your specific circumstances. Now, here's a list of questions you could consider. How will my policy affect students? How will my policy affect me? Will I feel better about myself as a teacher if I ban or allow cell phones? Will my policy limit my teaching options? Will my policy limit student learning options? Will my policy solve the problem? What's realistic? Now, you should know that I do not recommend outright bans because of their effect on rapport and effective learning, and because banning is the only method that guarantees students will not learn proper cell phone use. Now let me say that again for y'all in the back. A cell phone ban is the only method that can never teach or model proper cell phone use. For me, the importance of establishing rapport and credibility with students and the importance of teaching and modeling the use of the Gospel Library app outweighs the frustration I feel when students are distracted by something outside of class through a phone. Look, it's hard. Sometimes I lose it and I go Hulk. But the advantages of using cell phones as a tool in the classroom are worth the risk for me. Now, you may make a different decision, but please consider, if you decide to ban cell phones, the following information. You need to have an excellent reason why eliminating cell phones outweighs the benefits of including them, which are numerous, like losing access to all the Gospel Library tools, never being able to use an app like Kahoot or Quizzes to increase engagement, failing to teach future missionaries digital scripture skills, and losing the chance to model and encourage proper use of the cell phone. That said, here are some classroom situations that might require a ban. Someone in the classroom has a health condition where the blinking phones might cause a problem. There's an economic or wealth disparity issue so vast in your class that you just simply can't allow devices. It's causing too much problem between the haves and the have-nots in your class. Or you may teach in a way that precludes the use of cell phones. In other words, your lessons are exclusively instructor lecture. Now, this is a rare situation. It may only come in at the institute level, but it is possible that you may be a teacher who only teaches using lecture. And if so, then probably you should have cell phones banned in your classroom. Now, there are probably other situations that I haven't imagined that could demand a cell phone ban. Now, you know your situation best. I trust you. I know that you're doing what's best for you and your students, that you know your own skills, that you know your own abilities and your tolerances, and that you're seeking to do your very best in the classroom. Let's take a minute to talk about some reasons for banning that are not very good, though. It's not a good reason to ban cell phones if you're afraid students will use cell phones for purposes outside of class. Well, yes, they will. I regret to tell you this, but students will use pencils, paper scriptures, everything for purposes outside of class. But we don't ban those tools. Fearing possible misuse really isn't enough reason to ban, at least not by itself. Another bad reason to ban is that you feel students can't handle the distraction. Remember that in gospel classrooms, our outcomes are based in effective outcomes, not cognitive outcomes. Distraction by cell phone has been shown to affect cognitive learning outcomes negatively over and over again. However, unlike secular teachers, gospel teachers aren't focused on cognitive learning outcomes. Gospel teachers focus on measures that influence effective learning. Research shows having a cell phone policy that is perceived by students as unduly restrictive or negative will negatively influence effective learning. Consider this information very carefully before you ban simply because of distraction. Another not very good reason is that you're unfamiliar or intimidated with the tools. Don't let this get you down. I promise you can learn to be a gospel library ninja, and I'm going to do another video that teaches you how to do that. I promise you can totally do this. Another not really great reason is that maybe a student or two is defiant and would not comply with your more permissive policy. So punishing a group for the infractions of one isn't best practice. Some might even argue it goes against the principles taught in Article of Faith 2, that men will be punished for their own sins, not someone else's. Yes, banning phones might stop an offender, but it may also damage your rapport with all the other students who use their agency to comply. Think hard about eliminating phones because of the sins of one or two. Now, if you decide to allow cell phones, there's some considerations for you too. You need to be aware that students will not always comply with your policy. Sometimes students will break the rules. Remind yourselves to Q-tip, quit taking it personally, and try to remove yourself from the equation when you need to offer correction. You're going to sometimes need to enforce a penalty, and it may not be fun. Don't take it personally, right? And if your rules are stated and understood, it's not personal, it's not about you, they're not disrespecting you. They don't hate you because they're pulling their cell phones out. It really isn't about you. Don't take it personally, just enforce the rules in your classroom. Now, interrupting class to correct a student who is using a phone improperly can cause you to lose track of where you were in the lesson or to make someone else lose concentration. The disruption you cause by enforcing a rule may actually be more disruptive than the actual infraction itself. If you go Hulk while enforcing your policy, you could damage your relationship with the offender and other students irreparably, like Professor Dunn's did. And let's admit it, when you get frustrated, the spirit often leaves, which results in empty lessons. This is not our desired result. You may need to sacrifice some control over the class or conquer some natural tendencies in order to allow phones in your class. It will not always be sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. To allow phones, it's my opinion that you really do need to be an expert in Gospel Library app, or you need to be willing to learn. If you simply are not willing to learn a new tool, allowing cell phones may not be for you. Now, don't just allow phones because enforcing a ban is too hard. Allowing cell phones does not absolve you of responsibility. You will still need to demonstrate and encourage proper use, and you need to be able to enforce the penalties that you assign to misuse. If your policy is flawed, change it, but you must take responsibility for your policy and enforce it. Allowing cell phones will not automatically or instantly improve rapport. There are lots of other things that go into developing rapport, so please don't assume that allowing phones will instantly make you the cool kid. There's lots of work every day to developing and maintaining rapport with students. Cell phone policies are just one of many ways to do so. And just let me be clear, you can have a great rapport with students and ban cell phones outright in your classroom. That's possible. You can definitely do that. It's about tone. You can do it. Now, whatever you decide, to ban or not to ban, be sure that you explain your policy and the reasons for it to the class, but also explain that you recognize there may be a reason for a personal, long-term, or temporary exception, and encourage students to come to you and talk about it. Students may need a short-term exception because they are waiting for a call that mom is having a baby, or they may be waiting to hear special news like a mission call, or they may need a longer-term exception due to a special learning need or something. I had a student once who got a text during class from a friend who was feeling suicidal. Of course, that's the time to stop everything and encourage your friends. Seminary can wait. Encourage students to come to you and talk to you if they need an exception, and encourage them that you will accommodate them. The purpose of your policy is to help students, and if it's actually hurting them, you will work to fix it. Whether you ban or not, the exception is the rule. One final note here. Sometimes you don't get to decide a policy, and sometimes you might not agree with it. Please don't blame the stake seminary supervisor or bishop for a lame policy. Be sure that the way you talk about leadership does not damage your credibility by making you seem like a helpless stooge, or damage other leader credibility by making them sound irrationally strict and out of touch. Put another way, don't throw anybody under the bus. Deciding whether or not to ban is a difficult personal decision that depends on many factors. You can make a good decision that helps students and yourself learn the gospel better.